Hello! We're excited to show you our native speech capabilities. Welcome back to the English journey. Today, we are focusing on the most important topic in the world, you. I'm Anna.
And I'm Abel. I used to get so nervous when someone asked, "Tell me about yourself." Today, we will give you the English words to answer that question with a smile.
That is right, Abel. And I think so many of our listeners feel exactly the same way you used to feel. You know the words, you have studied English for a long time, but then someone looks at you and says, "So, tell me about yourself." And suddenly your mind goes completely empty.
Yes, that is exactly what happened to me. I remember my first job interview in English. The interviewer was very kind. She smiled at me, and then she asked that one question, "Tell me about yourself." And I just stared at her. I said, I am Abel. And then I stopped. That was it. I was so embarrassed.
Oh, Abel, that is such a real story. And I think many of our listeners are smiling right now because they have been there too. But here's the good news. Talking about yourself in English is a skill. And like every skill, you can learn it, you can practice it, and you can get very, very good at it.
That is the most important thing to understand. It is a skill. It is not something you're born with. When I was learning English, I thought some people were just naturally good at talking about themselves. But no, they had a system, they had a method, and today, we're going to share that method with you.
Exactly. So let us start with something very basic. Why is talking about yourself so important? I mean, why should you spend time learning this specific skill?
Good question. I think about it this way. Every new relationship in your life starts with an introduction. When you meet someone new, at school, at work, at a party, the very first thing that happens is an introduction. You share your name, you share a little bit about your life, and that is how a friendship begins.
That is a beautiful way to think about it, Abel. And it's not just friendships. Think about job interviews. Think about university applications. Think about networking events where you meet professionals in your field. In every single one of those situations, you will need to talk about yourself clearly and confidently.
And here's something I learned the hard way. If you cannot talk about yourself clearly, people may think you're not confident, but that's not true. You might be the most intelligent person in the room. You might have the best skills. But if you cannot communicate those skills, nobody will know.
Right. So today, we're going to solve that problem completely. We're going to give you words, phrases, sentences, and a formula. Yes, a formula. A simple system that you can use every single time someone asks you to talk about yourself.
I love that word, formula, because formulas are not complicated. Think about a recipe. When you make a simple dish, you follow steps. Step 1, Step 2, Step 3. And at the end, you have something delicious. Our formula for talking about yourself works the same way.
Perfect. So let us introduce our formula right now. We call it the present, past, future formula. It's beautifully simple and it works in every situation. Whether you're at a job interview, meeting a new friend, or introducing yourself in an English class.
So, let me explain it. Present means what you do right now, today, in your current life. Past means what you did before, your history, where you came from, what you studied, what jobs you had before, what experiences shaped you to who you are today.
And future means what you want to do next, your goals, your dreams, your plans.
That's it. Present, past, future. 3 simple steps, and when you follow these 3 steps, your introduction sounds natural, organized, and interesting. You don't sound like a robot, you sound like a real person telling their real story.
And that's the key word, story. When you talk about yourself, you're telling a story. Not a list of facts, not just your name, your age, your job, a real story with a beginning, a middle, and a direction.
Okay, so let's break down each part of the formula. Let's start with the present. The present is what is happening in your life right now. So, for example, if you're a student, you say, "I am currently a student at a university in Kerala." If you have a job, you say, "I work as a software engineer at a company in Kochi."
Notice that word currently. It's a very useful word. Currently means at this moment in time. So instead of just saying, I am a student, you say, I am currently a student. It sounds more natural and more professional.
Another great word for the present is right now. You can say, right now, I'm focusing on my final year of college. Or, right now, I'm working on a project related to artificial intelligence. These little phrases make your English sound much more fluent and natural.
And don't be afraid to mention where you live. Your location is part of your present life. You can say, I am currently living in Trivandrum, which is the capital city of Kerala in South India. That gives people a picture. They can imagine your life.
Wonderful. Now let's talk about the past. The past is your background. I want to stop on that word for a moment. Background. Your personal background is your personal history, where you grew up, what you studied, what jobs you had before, what experiences shaped you to who you are today.
I love the word background because it paints a picture. Imagine a painting. The thing you see in the front, that's the present. But the background, what's behind everything, that gives the painting depth. That makes it rich and interesting. Your personal background does the same thing for your story.
So, for the past section of your introduction, you might say something like this. I grew up in a small town called Anshul in Kerala. I studied computer science at a college in Trivandrum. After I graduated, I worked for a small tech company for 2 years. See how that flows? It's not just facts. It moves. It has a journey. You grew up somewhere, you studied something, you worked somewhere. Each sentence connects to the next one. That's storytelling.
And you can also mention 1 or 2 things that were important to you in the past. Maybe a teacher who inspired you. Maybe a challenge you overcame. These personal details make your introduction memorable. People will remember you, not just your job title.
Exactly. When I was preparing for interviews, my mentor told me something I never forgot. She said, Abel, people don't remember statistics. They remember stories. And she was absolutely right.
Okay. Now let's talk about the future. This is my favorite part. The future is where your energy lives. It's your goals, your dreams, your ambition. And that word ambition is so important. Ambition means you have a strong desire to achieve something. You want to grow. You want to reach something bigger.
And expressing your ambition in English is actually quite simple. You can use phrases like, my goal is to, or I hope to, or in the next few years, I plan to. These are easy to remember and very effective.
For example, you might say, in the next 2 years, I hope to work in the field of machine learning, or my goal is to start my own business and create jobs in my community. Or even something simple, like, I plan to keep improving my English so that I can work internationally.
That last one is great because it's honest and relatable. So many of our listeners have that exact goal, and there's nothing wrong with saying it. It shows self-awareness. It shows where you are and where you want to go.
All right, so we have our formula: present, past, future. Now let us go deeper into each area. Let us talk about how to describe your work and your school life, because for many people, this is the first thing they mention when they talk about themselves.
And this can be tricky because sometimes when we describe our job or our studies, we use very technical words, or we just say the job title and stop there. I am an engineer, full stop, end of sentence. But that tells people almost nothing about who you really are.
Right, so instead of just saying your job title, try to describe what you actually do. Use action words, words like manage, create, teach, design, develop, help, organize. These words bring your work to life.
For example, instead of saying, I am a teacher, you could say, I teach English to young children, and I help them build confidence in speaking. See the difference? You are not just telling me your job, you are telling me what you do and why it matters.
And the same applies to students. Instead of saying, I am a student, you could say, I am studying data science, and I'm currently working on a research project about traffic patterns in my city. Now that is interesting. Now I want to know more about you.
And do not be afraid to mention the challenges of your work or your studies. I know it might feel strange to mention difficulties, but actually, when you say, it's challenging, but I enjoy it, you sound very mature. You sound real.
Absolutely. Nobody wants to talk to someone who says everything is perfect all the time. A little honesty makes you more likable, more human. And in English conversation, being human is always the right choice.
Okay, so now let's move to one of the most fun parts of this episode, hobbies and passions, because this is where your personality really comes through.
Yes, and I want to start by talking about the difference between a boring answer and an interesting answer, because there's a big difference. And it's not about using difficult words, it's about using more words. It's about giving just a little more detail.
So, boring answer. I like football. That's it. 3 words. And there's nothing wrong with those words, but they tell me nothing unique about you. A million people like football, so how are you different?
And interesting answer, I'm passionate about football, especially watching matches from the English Premier League. I support Liverpool, and I never miss a game on Sunday mornings. Football taught me a lot about teamwork and not giving up.
Wow, see the difference? Now I know your team, I know your routine, I know what football means to you, and I might even share something about my own team. A real conversation has started.
And I want to highlight that phrase, I'm passionate about. This is so much stronger than I like. Passionate means you have strong feelings about something. It means it's important to you. When you say I'm passionate about something, people sit up and listen.
So let's practice this together for a moment. Think about one of your hobbies, maybe cooking, maybe drawing, maybe reading, maybe hiking. And now instead of saying, I like cooking, try to say, I'm passionate about cooking because...
And finish that sentence with a real reason. Why do you love it? How does it make you feel? Does it connect you to your family, your culture, your memories? That personal connection is what makes your answer unforgettable.
For me, I always say, I'm passionate about learning languages because every language is like a new window. When you learn a new language, you see the world from a completely different angle, and that always starts a great conversation.
I love that, Abel. That is such a beautiful way to put it. And you know what? That's also an example of your personality coming through. And that's our next topic, personality. How do you describe who you are as a person?
This is something many learners find very difficult, describing your personality in English, because you know who you are, but finding the right English words to describe it can be challenging.
So let me give you some simple and powerful adjectives. Adjectives are describing words. For personality, you can use words like curious, creative, organized, hardworking, patient, ambitious, open-minded, and reliable.
And again, don't just say the word. Give an example. Don't just say, I'm hardworking. Say, I consider myself hardworking because I always finish what I start, even when it's difficult. That's the evidence. That's the proof. And it makes your statement believable.
Another great way to describe your personality is to say what other people say about you. For example, my friends often say that I am very reliable. If I promise something, I always do it. This is a clever technique because it sounds humble. You're not just praising yourself, you're sharing what others observe.
I use that technique in my job interview, actually. I said, my colleagues often describe me as someone who stays calm under pressure. And the interviewer smiled and said, that's exactly what we need. So it really works.
Wonderful. Okay, now I want to talk about something that is very important but is often forgotten, the confidence tip. What do you do when someone asks you a question in English and you do not understand it? What do you do when your mind goes blank?
Oh, this is so important. Because this happens, even to advanced English speakers. It is completely normal. The key is to not panic, to not freeze, to have a simple, prepared response that buys you a little time.
Exactly. And there are some beautiful phrases in English that let you pause gracefully. Gracefully means in a smooth, comfortable way, without looking nervous. You can say, that is a great question. Let me think about that for a moment.
Or you can say, I want to make sure I understand you correctly. Could you say that again, please? That phrase is brilliant because it shows that you are careful, you are thoughtful, you want to give a good answer. That is actually a sign of intelligence, not weakness.
And if you still do not understand, you can say, I'm sorry, could you rephrase that? I want to make sure I give you the right answer. Rephrase means to say the same thing in different words, and most people are very happy to do that.
The worst thing you can do is pretend you understood and then give a completely wrong answer. That is more damaging than simply asking for clarification. And clarification is another great vocabulary word. Clarification means making something clear and easy to understand.
So remember, if you do not understand, ask. If you need time to think, use a phrase. If you are nervous, take a breath. And remind yourself, the person asking you questions wants you to do well. They are on your side.
Okay, now let us talk about something very personal and very special. How to talk about your home, your culture, your hometown, because this is where you can really stand out in a conversation.
And since many of our listeners are from Kerala, let's use that as our example, because Kerala is one of the most beautiful and culturally rich places in the whole world. And if you can describe it to someone who has never been there, you will absolutely capture their imagination.
So when you talk about your hometown, start with the basics, the name, the location, the size. I'm from a small town called Anchal, which is in the southern part of Kerala, India. It's surrounded by beautiful green hills and rubber plantations.
Beautiful. Now add a sensory detail. Sensory means related to your senses. What does it look, sound, smell, or feel like? In the morning, you can hear birds singing and the smell of fresh coffee fills the air. It's very peaceful and very green.
I get emotional when I talk about home because it's so real, and that emotion is actually good. It's authentic. Authentic means real and genuine. When you speak with real emotion, people connect with you instantly.
You can also share one tradition or festival. Kerala is famous for the Onam festival. Onam is a harvest festival where families come together to share a special meal called the Onam Sadhya. It has more than 20 different dishes, all served on a banana leaf.
And if you mention something unique like that, the other person will naturally have questions. A banana leaf? Really? What do you eat? And now the conversation is flowing naturally. You're not just answering questions, you're creating them.
That is such a clever observation, Abel. The best introductions do not just inform, they create curiosity. They make the other person want to know more. And talking about your culture is one of the most powerful ways to do that.
And do not ever be embarrassed about where you come from. I used to feel a little shy mentioning my small town. I thought people might not know it or might not be interested. But actually the opposite is true. People are always fascinated by something they have never experienced before.
Absolutely. The world is full of people who have only seen one or two cultures. When you share yours, you are giving them a gift. You're opening a window to a world they have never seen. And that is something very precious.
Okay, so now I want to talk about something very practical, common mistakes. Because even with the best intentions, people often make the same mistakes when they talk about themselves in English. And if we can identify those mistakes, we can avoid them.
The biggest mistake, without any doubt, is listing facts instead of telling a story. So what do I mean by that? A list of facts sounds like this. My name is Abel. I am 26 years old. I studied engineering. I work at a tech company. I like cricket. I am from Kerala.
That sounds like a resume read out loud or an entry in a database. There is no life in it. There is no connection. And after 10 seconds, the person listening has already forgotten everything you said.
Because our brains are not designed to remember lists. Our brains are designed to remember stories. Stories have emotion, they have movement, they have a beginning and a direction. And when you add those elements to your introduction, it becomes memorable.
So instead of listing facts, connect them. Use linking words and phrases. Words like because, which means, so, and that is why. These words create a thread. They sew your sentences together into something whole.
For example, instead of separate facts, you say, my name is Abel. I grew up in Anchal, a small town in Kerala, which is known for its beautiful greenery. I studied engineering because I've always been fascinated by how things work. Right now, I work in the field of artificial intelligence, which is a very exciting area because it's changing the world so fast. In my free time, I love playing cricket, which teaches me a lot about strategy and teamwork.
Do you hear that? The same information, but now it's connected. It flows. It breathes. It sounds like a person, not a machine.
And another common mistake is being too humble. Especially in some cultures, people are taught that talking about their achievements is impolite or arrogant. But in English professional contexts, it's completely normal and expected.
Achievements, that is another important vocabulary word. Your achievements are the things you have accomplished, the goals you have reached, the moments where you succeeded at something important.
And you do not have to be arrogant to mention them. You can say, I'm quite proud of the fact that, or one thing I feel good about is, or I was fortunate enough to achieve. These phrases are confident but not arrogant.
Right. Arrogant means you think you are better than everyone else. Confident means you believe in your own value. There's a big difference. And English speakers appreciate confidence. They respond to it positively.
And one more mistake I want to mention, using memorized robotic sentences. You know what I mean. Some learners memorize their introduction word for word, and then they deliver it like a machine. Same speed, same tone, same rhythm, and it sounds completely unnatural.
Your introduction should feel alive. It is okay to pause. It is okay to add a small joke. It is okay to say something you did not plan, because that is what real conversation feels like. A little unpredictable, a little spontaneous.
Spontaneous means happening naturally, without too much planning. And the way you build that spontaneity is by practicing your ideas, not your exact words. Know your story, but let the words come naturally in the moment.
Practice the formula, practice the ideas, but do not memorize word for word, because if you forget one word, your whole introduction collapses. But if you know your story deeply, you can always find the words.
Okay, I think we are almost at the end of our episode, and I am so excited for this final part because we are going to bring everything together with a live practice exercise. Abel, are you ready?
I am ready, and I'm a little bit nervous, honestly, but I remember what we said. Nervousness is normal, and I have my formula, so let me go.
Perfect. Okay, Abel. So the question is, tell me about yourself.
Okay, here we go. My name is Abel, and I'm originally from a small, beautiful town called Anchal, which is in Kerala, in the southern part of India. Kerala is often called God's own country because of its incredible natural beauty. There are green hills, backwaters, and coconut trees everywhere you look. Growing up there gave me a deep appreciation for nature and community. I studied computer science at a college in Trivandrum, the capital city of Kerala. I chose computer science because I have always been curious about how technology can solve real-world problems. After I graduated, I worked for a small software company for about 2 years, where I helped develop mobile applications for small businesses. Right now, I'm currently focusing on the field of artificial intelligence. I find it absolutely fascinating because AI is not just technology, it's changing the way humans live, work, and communicate. I'm working on a personal project that uses machine learning to help farmers in rural areas predict the best time to harvest their crops. It's still in progress, but it's something I'm deeply passionate about. In my free time, I love playing cricket with my friends. Cricket is a sport that teaches you patience, strategy, and the importance of working as a team. I'm also very passionate about learning languages. Right now, I'm working on improving my English, and eventually I hope to learn Spanish as well. In terms of my personality, I would describe myself as someone who is curious and hardworking. My friends often say that I'm very reliable because when I commit to something, I always follow through. I also consider myself open-minded. I love meeting people from different cultures and learning about how they see the world. Looking ahead to the future, my biggest goal is to use technology to create a positive impact in my community. I'm very interested in how AI can be applied in agriculture and education, especially in rural parts of India where resources are limited. I hope that in the next 5 years, I will be working on projects that genuinely make a difference in people's lives. So, that's a little bit about me. I'm always happy to learn, always looking forward, and always grateful for a good conversation.
Abel, that was absolutely perfect. Seriously, I am so impressed. And I want all of our listeners to notice everything that Abel did. He used the present, past, future formula. He described his hometown with sensory details. He mentioned his work with specific action words. He shared a passion and explained why it matters to him. He described his personality with evidence. He talked about his future goals with real ambition. And he ended with warmth and openness.
And honestly, it did not feel difficult because I had the formula, I had the vocabulary, and I had practiced my ideas. Not the exact words, the ideas. And everything came together naturally.
That's the most beautiful thing about this formula. Once you know it, it works everywhere. At a party, at an interview, on a first day of a new job, in an English class, anywhere someone says, "Tell me about yourself," you have the answer.
And I want to say one last thing to everyone listening. Please do not wait until you think your English is perfect to start talking about yourself. Your story is worth telling right now, exactly as you are. Your background is interesting. Your hometown is beautiful. Your goals are meaningful. The world wants to hear about you.
That's such a wonderful message, Abel. I could not say it better myself. So here's your homework from this episode. Tonight or tomorrow morning, I want you to write your own introduction using the present, past, future formula. Write about your hometown, write about your work or your studies, share one hobby and explain why you're passionate about it. Describe one part of your personality with an example, and state one goal for your future.
And then read it out loud. Not once, at least 5 times, because the more you say your own story in English, the more natural it will feel. And one day, when someone asks you, "Tell me about yourself," you won't feel nervous. You'll feel excited because you'll have something real and beautiful to share.
I love that so much. Thank you to everyone who listened to this episode of The English Journey. If you found this helpful, please share it with a friend who's also learning English, because learning is always better together.
And remember, every fluent English speaker you have ever admired was once exactly where you are right now. They started with one word, one sentence, one introduction, and they kept going. So, keep going. We believe in you.
See you in the next episode. Until then, keep practicing, keep sharing your story, and keep moving forward on your English journey. Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye, and remember, your story is already great. You just need the English words to tell it.